Right, hello everyone. So let's welcome to my another video. And in this video, we are going to discuss about the promises in JavaScript. How we can create a JavaScript promise and how is it useful? What is the use case for a promise? All those steps. So let's get started. So you know, so promise is basically a way of handling the asynchronous operations in JavaScript. And of course, the promise is one of the ways that we can deal with the asynchronous operations. And we have been using like callback methods for this same purpose. And then promises is just another option which can be a lot better in some cases. Okay, and for example, the promises, right? So promises, when you say the promises in JavaScript, it's similar to the promises that we have in our real life. So we make a promise, and then that we'll do something in future, and then either it can have two outcomes, right? It can be we will complete the promise or we will not complete the promise. So it's the same concept here in JavaScript also. It will say, okay, I'm going to do this task, and it can either be successfully completed or it can fail. Okay, so for example, if I have an operation of like a synchronous operation of calling an API. Let's say if I want to call an API, get the response and pass it back, right? So at some point I'll call that API, right? I will use a promise to call that API, and from inside the promise I will make the API call, and if the API call is successful and if I get the data back from the server, I will say, okay, this promise is successful, and I will pass the data back to the requester. Or in case if I'm not able to hit the API, get the response, or in case of any errors, I will say, okay, this promise is not successful, so this is an error. Okay, so let's create a simple promise. Let's see how we can create a promise and then how we can handle the success and the failure scenarios. Okay, so this is how you create a promise. So const, I'll call my promise as test promise is equal to new promise. Okay, so this is how you write a promise. So in the console I can see there is some error, promise uncaught type error, promise resolver undefined is not a function. So promise resolver is not a function. So basically whenever you define a promise, there should be two uh, methods or two parameters into it. Either it can be a resolve or it can be a reject. So basically resolve is like once you have once you are able to completely process the asynchronous request within your promise, you call this resolve method saying, okay, this is resolved. Or in case of some error, I will say, okay, I'll call this reject callback method saying, okay, if this method is not completed, so it's a failure. Okay, so basically you pass like two parameters, resolve and reject, and you can write the functions inside it. Okay, this is how you write a promise. So I can do the asynchronous operations within inside of the promise, and then I can call this resolve or reject callback methods based on the output of this method, this asynchronous method, asynchronous thing that we are calling inside this. Okay, so I'm assuming that it is going to be if of let's I'm assuming that this is always going to be true. I'm doing some condition checks or API calls or something, and it is successful. Okay, so in that case I can select resolve, else reject. So in this case it's always going to call this resolve because I've put this as true. So let's assume in a real world scenario you have some conditions checked, and then if it is like if that conditions are met, and then if you successfully process the request, then you want to call this resolve method. This is the way that you call the resolve method, and this is the way that you reject the method. Okay, and you can pass the parameters. Let's say I'm passing as success, I'm passing as failure. Okay, so how do you process this promise, right? So basically, then how do we use this promise, right? So we have two other methods that we have defined, which is the then and the catch. Okay, let's say if you want to call this promise test promise dot then, so this will be executed whenever you have this process is resolved. So basically, when you call the resolve, the dot then will be executed. Okay, so then again there's a function, and there is another method called the catch. So this will be executed if this reject method is called. Okay, so whenever this resolve method is called, it will trigger the then function. So this then function will be executed, and then if it is a reject, then this catch will be executed. Okay, let's say if I have some message I'm passing here, catch of some error, then I'm just printing out this console.log of message. So as you see in the console, so let me print this error too. As you see in the console, you can see success here, right? So because if true, this is always going to go inside the resolve. So resolve, if I call this resolve a success, it'll be executed by the then method because it's a success call, and then it will just print the console message in the console. So we get the success. So let's say if I'm just passing, there's some, if like 1 is less than 5, let's say if 1 is greater than 5, I'm printing. So this is failed, right? So what will happen is this reject will be triggered, which will be actually caught by the catch method, and then prints out the console.log of this error. Basically this failure is what we're passing. Okay, so this is basically the use case of a promise. So whenever you want to execute an asynchronous call, then you can use a promise, and then you can use these two methods like the resolve and the reject to call the two callback methods to tell that it is successful or not, and then you can catch using the then and the catch method to process the request successfully. So let's say if you have an API call which is happening inside, which is again an asynchronous call, you make that call inside of the promise, and once it is successful, you get the data back from the let's say the API call, right? So basically in the same scenario, you can pass the resolve of inside it, you can pass the data, okay, the data that you got as a response from of the API, right? So now what you can do is you can if you call using dot then, you will get the data inside of this, and then you can do whatever you want to do with the data inside of this then method. If the API is failed, obviously it is going to call the reject method, and you can call it will be caught inside a catch, and then you can see the error message. You can do whatever you want to do with the error message. Okay. So this is basically the very simple concept of promise. So I hope you learned something from this tutorial. If yes, please do like this video and put a comment, and also do share this video with your friends, and do subscribe to my channel if you have not yet subscribed. Okay, and thanks a lot for watching, and see you in the next video. Thanks.